Kate Millett, the famous feminist writer known for sexual politics, was also an artist, and she came to the Women's Building and did a big installation, filled the whole third floor. And women in the Feminist Studio Workshop helped her to create these gigantic naked ladies. They were chicken wire structures with paper mache, and she was trying to sort of show this alternative view of women looking powerful and not your svelte, modelly kind of bodies. So they were these fat, larger-than-life women doing ordinary things like sitting on the sofa, eating, or standing in front of a refrigerator, or watching TV, and one had her hands on her hips. So anyway, when the show was over, all of them went to homes. They were bought by collectors or put in people's homes, whatever. And there was one that was left over, and she was stored in this, what we called the inner sanctum. It was this room, kind of a tool room in the center of the building. And we would often hang out in that room just to get away from everybody, just to take a break, those of us that worked at the building. And one day, so she's standing back there, this woman with her hands on her hips, and Sue, Maberry, and I were just looking at her, and we said, what would be really cool is if we just hoisted her to the top of the building. And so we went to Leslie Labowitz, who was the PR director at the time, and we said, Leslie, we've got this great idea.
We were looking at ways to get the word out about the Women's Building. Cheri and Sue wanted to say, well, hey, let's do something with this big sculpture, and kind of created this idea of putting it on top of the building. And I was probably resistant, so I can't hardly remember the story, but whatever it was, I got into it. And again, I got into the idea, hey, well, okay, let's make this a big thing if we're going to do it.
And we did it as this big public media event. And she'd be standing on top of the building as this beacon for the neighborhood and for the world.
At the Women's Building, once someone had an idea, it became everyone's job to figure out how to do it. You never said, oh, that's ridiculous. We're never going to get that up there. We had no access to the roof of the building. So we had to go on top of the elevator that took it up to the floor, open a hole that serviced the elevator, climb out onto the roof, build a pulley system, and use our own human weight as a counterbalance to pull this lady up. It looked a lot worse than it was, but it was a lot scarier than it looked, because they were paper mache figures. About the biggest one, I think, was about 11 feet tall. And they were big, huge, rock-looking women, but they were paper mache covered with Loxone and cement. So they looked like they were made of stone. But that because they were paper mache, they were quite fragile. It was heavy enough because it had a 2x4 frame in it. But when you looked at it coming up the side of the building, it looked like, 5 women were lifting this huge stone thing. But the hardest part was keeping it balanced so it didn't crash into the building and ruin the piece. And at the bottom was Kate Millett standing there going, because we couldn't hear her. We were 3 stories up, and she was like giving directions, and we were up there with this pulley. It was a trial.
Again, using the media event model, we created an event, and we were very good timing. There must have been no other news, because we got front page coverage of something that said, I think it says a new image of women, I think is how we were trying to present this, is that here we are today, here is our new image. I think it did get the press that the building needed.
And from that moment on, we sort of had street cred in the neighborhood, because we were in a neighborhood downtown that was a no man's land. It was like a warehouse district. Nobody really came there. Like all the truck drivers who went by and the local coffee shop, they all knew the building suddenly. It really kind of put the building on the map. Maybe it was a harebrained idea, but it was a harebrained idea that really worked.